Hi, come on in. Thank you for dropping by. I appreciate it. My name is Sauls, and I've got some stories to tell you. Stories that I think you might find interesting. I have experienced a lot of miracles in my life, and I want to share those stories with you. Back about 1966, January of 66, I was 19 years old. I was coming up Route 95, pedal to the metal, doing about 65 miles an hour. It was nighttime and it was pouring down rain. When all of a sudden, I heard a voice out of nowhere. And I was driving and it said, change lanes. So I changed lanes. And then, whoosh, I missed a sofa, a red floral sofa, which was in the middle of the road. What would have happened if I had hit that sofa at 65 miles an hour in my Volkswagen? I didn't want to think. Then I started thinking, where did that voice come from? Who was that? Who spoke to me? I didn't know. It couldn't have been God. I didn't believe in him. Oh well, it's just one of those unknowables, I guess. And it was 15 months later that I heard that voice again. This time, I was in the Army infantry. I was on top of a mountain in Vietnam. It was my first night out in the field as a combat photographer. To say that I was a little anxious about my job was an understatement. But it's something I volunteered for and I was going to carry it through. I made a little tent out of my poncho, tied some string between the holes in it and stretched it out between two trees. And I had a little tent. And I put my air mattress under there and I blew it up and I got on it and I settled back and it was pretty comfortable. The evening sun was filtering through the trees and it was beautiful. And I just sighed a sigh of relief when all of a sudden, blam! I jumped up. What on earth is that? I couldn't figure it out. All of a sudden I heard it again, blam! And this time shrapnel was streaking through the trees. And I heard that voice again, get out now. And I grabbed my helmet and I ran over some boulders and I jumped into a crevice. And that's where I stayed for the next 20 minutes. They dropped about 10 more mortar rounds on us. They were walking the rounds around our encampment. They were letting us know, they being the North Vietnamese, were letting us know that they knew we were there. Not only did they know that, but they had us zeroed in. But then they left us alone. Fortunately, I went back to my tent, what was left of it. It was in shreds, and my air mattress was flat as a fritter. I put my hand on the air mattress and I could feel the shrapnel sticking up through the air mattress and into the ground. And where my stomach had been, there was a piece of shrapnel about the size of my hand. If it had hit me, it would have hit me in the stomach and it would have practically cut me in half. It certainly would have killed me. That's the second time I've heard that voice. The second time that voice has saved my life. Who was that? No one else heard him. I still counted as being one of those unknowables. Certainly wasn't God. Well, 6 months later, I was having a very good time as a combat photographer, taking a lot of pictures. My pictures were appearing in Stars and Stripes, which is a Army newspaper that went around the world. My pictures were also showing up in the Ivy Leaf, which was the 4th Infantry Division newspaper. I got a center page spread in it. I was really pretty proud of myself. And I wanted to extend for 6 more months in country and continue taking pictures. So I asked the clerk to fill out the papers, and he did. And I came over the next day to sign the papers. And I sat down, and he handed me a pen. And I put the pen to the paper, and I heard that voice, and it said, "Go home." And I thought, where did that voice come from? There's no one in here except the clerk. And I put the pen to the paper again, and this time it said, "Go home." Well, I put the pen down, and I told the clerk, I think I'll go home. A wise decision, I later learned. The next day I was on an airplane going to Virginia. 6 weeks after I got home, I was watching the news, and my unit was involved in a heavy firefight in the Central Highlands. They were trying to take a hill that the North Vietnamese had. They were deeply dug in. And they fought for about 3 days, and they lost 200 men, a little bit more than 200 men. And I have no idea how many were wounded. That's the third time that voice saved my life. Of course, all 3 times, as soon as the Lord spoke, I didn't know it was the Lord then, but as soon as he spoke, I obeyed. Well, I got home, or I was home, and my life continued. And it was about 3 years later, excuse me, I was home, and it was, 10, 15 years later before I heard that voice again. This time, I was a believer, and I was praying about something hot and heavy. It was so important to me. I have no idea what it was. And I heard the voice of the Lord again. And this time he said, "Ray, do you want to be one of my ministers?" And I said, "Yes, Lord, I do." "Are you going to do it polluting my air?" "What? Polluting your air?" Then I realized he was talking about my smoking habit. When I was in Vietnam, I'd gotten up to 4 packs of Lucky Strikes every day. My lungs would gurgle at night, and I changed over to a pipe. And instead of having gurgling lungs, my throat and tongue burned a lot. But I enjoyed it, and I smoked it a little bit too much. And now the Lord was suggesting that I give it up. And I said, "Lord, I love my pipe. I really love my pipe. How about if I just smoke it here at home? Hypocrite. Then he said, what does my word say? And I had just memorized this verse about a week before. And it said, know ye not that your body is the temple of God? And that if any man defile the temple of God, him shall God destroy. Oh, he got me with that one. So I surrendered. And I said, Lord, I will quit smoking. Tobacco will never touch my lips again. And that was August 21st, 1981. And I haven't touched tobacco since. Now, you might say, he didn't save my life. Oh yeah, I believe he did. Cancer could have cut me down in no time because I was a heavy smoker. So that's 4 times that the Lord saved my life. In 1985, I think it was, I had a little Datsun B210 that I bought used. And I was coming out from my office after a rainstorm one summer day. And the steam was coming up off the road. It smelled good. And I got in the car and I just felt this clenching feeling right here. As if the Lord was saying, don't leave yet. I didn't hear a verbal voice. It was a feeling right here. So I said, okay, Lord. And I pulled the seat back and I laid back for about 15 minutes. And then I felt it was okay. And I asked the Lord, is it okay to leave? I didn't get an answer. So I assumed that was a yes. So I started my car and off I went. Well, as I got back toward home, I was on the back roads of Fairfax County. And I was coming up this hill, and quite frankly, I was going pretty fast. And coming up the other side of the hill, I could see a policeman carrying a flare. And when I saw that flare, I hit the brakes as hard as I could. And I went over the hill and I was sliding down the other side of the hill, and there was a Cadillac turned sideways in the road, and I stopped about a foot or maybe 2 feet short of hitting that Cadillac. What would have happened if I had hit that Cadillac at my normal speed, which was pretty fast, just under Mach 1? I think I probably would have killed myself again. Anyway, that's 5 times that the Lord had spoken to me and spared my life. Another time, I was in my workshop and I was cutting up some wood on something called a radial arm saw. It's a power saw, but they're not very safe, and I didn't know it when I bought it. And I had turned the blade so that it was aimed at the door. And I was ripping material through it. And I had this overwhelming feeling that if Renee came into the workshop and I was ripping the wood, a piece of wood could fly off and hit her in the chest and kill her. That's what went through my mind. And sure enough, a moment later, she pushes open the door, and I reached up and I turned off the saw. Shortly after she left the room, I turned the saw back on, and I was running a piece of wood through it, and it caught the wood and it split, or it shot a long splinter at the door. The door is solid cedar, and it punctured that door and cut a big notch in it, right about where her heart would have been. I know for a fact that the Lord spared her life by telling me what to do. Now, a lot of people today don't believe that God talks to us. I had a minister tell me that one day. God does not speak to his people today. That went out the days of the apostles. I know that some seminaries teach their ministers that miracles don't happen today because God used the miracles in the days of the apostles so that people would believe. It tells us in Hosea, I am the Lord, I change not. He still uses miracles today, and he still speaks to people today. Jesus said, my sheep hear my voice, and I know them, and they follow me. If you're a believer, you're one of God's sheep. And he will speak to you and you can follow him. But as the Lord demonstrated in my life, 3 times he spoke to me audibly and I was not a believer. But he spoke to me anyway. And I am convinced that God speaks to everyone, sometimes audibly, sometimes it's that feeling that you get right in here, an uncertain feeling. Listen to it. That might be God telling you not to do something, or maybe to do something. He loves you, whether you know him or not. He loves you, and he wants you to hear his voice. And he wants to share miracles with you because he has a lot to show you. His word says in Jeremiah 33, call on me, and I will show you great and mighty things which thou knowest not. In the next few weeks, I'm going to be publishing a lot of these little videos, telling you about the miracles that I have experienced. I hope that it will encourage you to get serious about God. Learn to listen to what he has to say if you can. And look for miracles. Believe for miracles. Well, if you liked what you heard tonight, I'd appreciate it if you'd hit the subscribe button and the like button. But more importantly, share this video with someone. I'd appreciate it. Thank you.